My friend John Chevalier has been a volunteer worship leader. He's also been on staff as a full-time worship leader at more than one church. He's got a whale of a lot of experience. And a while back, he and I sat down and just talked about the whole idea of being a worship leader and some of the ins and outs of that. And one of the things that we talked about was pastor-worship leader relationship. Take a listen.
I would say rarely do I run across a pastor and a worship leader who see eye to eye on everything. Having that solid relationship really helps that and allows really both sides to grow. If you don't have that relationship, I think the enemy can use that. I think that's where we start getting thoughts in our minds about, well, the pastor doesn't support me, or he doesn't like what I'm doing, and the worst case scenario is, well, the pastor doesn't understand worship, something like that. And I'm just trying to do what I'm wanting to do, where the pastor is sitting there and saying, okay, what am I going to do with this little arrogant jerk that I have as a worship leader, because they think they but if you have a relationship and you're talking through that, I've taught a little bit to other worship leaders. I used to teach this class that was called the Pastor-Worship Leader Relationship. And I used to intro that class as, I want to tell you why I qualify to teach this class. I said, I work for the best church in the world, and I have the best pastor in the world. I have the best job in the world. And I want to share that with you. Well, as years went on, I left that church, moved out of state, and took a position at another church. And I still remember teaching that next year, and I want to tell you what qualifies me to teach this class. I used to say, serious, I have the best pastor in the world, I have the best job in the world, I love what I do. But I've also been in the situation, I would never say now, but I said, but since then I've had experiences where the relationship between myself and the pastor was not what it should have been. We didn't take the time, and at the time it was just naive, I think, on both of our parts. I had never moved out of state and just taken another worship leading position, and he had never hired somebody he had planted the church. The church was at 250. I was there for a year. It grew to like 375. It was crazy good stuff happening. What we put forth was a good product. But behind the scenes, within the first month, the pastor and I had conflict. And we didn't take the time to build that relationship, as impractical as I think it would be. I would probably, if I had to do that over again, I said, yes, I will come. Yes, we can move my family 900 miles from where I am. Yes. But for the first month that I'm there, let's just let your current worship team continue to lead worship, and let me be part of your congregation, and let's you and I hang out. That's probably what I would do. Sure. Because I think it just leaves a big open spot, and the enemy is after leaders anyway. I think, pastors.
That relationship is that important.
I think it's absolutely that important. The church I am at now, we're slowly developing. They wanted to bring me on pastoral staff right away. And I just said, no, let's take 90 days. And he thought that meant I was leaving in 90 days. But I said, no, I don't want to be part of your leadership team. I don't want to come to your meetings. I just want to walk with you. I just want to lead worship. I just want to go to lunch. And I just don't communicate to the congregation that we've made this big commitment if we don't know each other yet. Let's not hurt anybody. Sure. Let's just kind of walk. And it's been good. Is our relationship where it needs to be? Probably not yet, but we're heading in that direction, and that's really good. That's a really good thing.
That's great. Have you heard me talk about my late pastor and I doing a worship leader pastor relationship class?
No.
Years ago at one of Kent's conferences.
Okay.
He and I team taught it.
Okay.
So one of the things I was trying to convey to the worship leaders that were there is how important their role is and how much sway they have. Mm-hmm. Because you're up in front a lot. I mean, I've been in this church for a long time. I know because of my longevity, because of the influence that I have, that if I wanted to, I could go down the street and I could start another church. I know I could do. I'm just trying to get across. You have a lot of sway, and you need to recognize that. I said I'd never do that. I said if for no other reason, you're going to reap what you sow. So I wouldn't do that. But I just want you to understand. So after the class, my pastor comes to me and says, "Tom, if you ever did that, I'd go with you."
But you know what? Ding, 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 ding. That's the right answer, right?
Right, and that's just it was a great relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, he wasn't afraid that I was going to do something weird or anything like that. He had total confidence in me. So it was just one of those things that, yeah, it was a cool thing.
One of my first pastors and we had a chance to sit down prior to he's passed away since. But I remember a day that we were in his office. I couldn't even tell you what it was. He was mad. I was mad back. It was like toe to toe. Just an argument that we were in.
Wow.
And
he was bigger than you, as I recall.
he was, and he was an ex-Marine too. I was just fast, so and smaller. I just run between his legs and out the door. Woo! But we had coffee shortly before he died. We met at a Starbucks for coffee, and we were just talking about stuff, just reconnecting. And I said, "Do you remember that day?" I said, "How close were you? How close were you to firing me that day? I just want to know." And he got real serious. He goes, "Never crossed my mind." He goes, "Why would you ask? Were you going to quit?" And then it was like this aha moment for both of us. Looking back, no, I wasn't going to quit. And we talked about that. We were two very passionate people thinking our point was right, like that.
Sure.
But he was committed to me, and I was committed to him. And we were in that happens in a church now. Well, the Bible says, boom, you're gone. We lean on that. And frankly, I call that, this is heavy, but I call that spiritual abuse. Using the Bible to beat someone. But he didn't do that. We had the conflict. We let the conflict happen. We got over the conflict, I'm sure, because we made up. So I'm sure we worked it out some way. I don't remember what we did. But that conversation years later was really awesome. Because it was, no, I wasn't thinking of quitting. And he wasn't thinking of firing me. But I remember getting looks from the other staff members when I walked out of that office because they could hear us.
Sure.
Yeah.
But you recognize that even in the midst of that conflict, the relationship was solid.
No, the relationship was there. We were committed to each other. We were on the same team. We were fighting the same battle. And it was just, I cannot remember even what it was about. But, and most of those things
that's a
goofy
powerful thing, because when you really have that relationship, it can be like in a marriage. My wife and I don't always see eye to eye on everything. And there are times that we're face to face, not in an ugly way, but in a serious way, nevertheless. But at the same time, we are both totally committed to one another.
Right.
And so, there's never a thought of wanting to do any physical harm or walk out the door or anything like that. No, we might be passionate about this particular issue, but we're way more passionate about the relationship.
Right.
And that's, when you have that kind of a thing in a pastor worship leader relationship, that's huge.
Yeah, and I think that's the goal. I will say, from talking to a lot of worship leaders, I think our situation was very unique.
Right, and I would agree.
In some ways, John's situation was unique, but I don't think it should be. If we honestly take the time to help cultivate that relationship, it's going to make a big difference. And maybe that means that we as worship leaders, if our pastor isn't taking the initiative in that, maybe we need to help develop that relationship, because when we do, it's going to make both of our jobs, our pastor's job and our job, a whole lot easier. It's going to be a whole lot more unity, and things are just going to go better over the long term. It's just going to happen. And so we're going to talk more about this idea in future installments of this, but at least for the time being, I would challenge you to really make that a concerted effort on your part to help develop that relationship with your pastor.
Brought to you by MyWorshipLeadingCoach.com.
helping you to be more fully equipped as a worship leader.